Welcome back, darlings. In this video, we'll be looking at Garage Therapy Trim, their new do-it-all trim dressing. There's something that I was incredibly surprised they brought to market, because there's already a do-it-all trim dressing in the form of CarPro Perl, and that's definitely a jack of all trades and master of none. So can this really be better? Because the question really is, can this wonder product really replace 4 different ones? Because you can use it here, 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 and here. And that's what I aim to find out. So let's go and try and see what it's like to apply in all these different places. Now, interior trim is an important one, as is exterior. So this is the door where my daughter gets in and out of the car, which means it gets a lot of footfall because she treads on this. So I'm going to do a 50-50 test here with the OG 303 Aerospace Protectant. See how we go on.
Now, before you apply any protectant product, you need to clean the surface, in my opinion. So I'm using Chemi Polestar here at 1:20 with a microfiber scrubber pad, and then I'm just using a regular microfiber cloth just to buff that off and dry it out. This cloth is different to the one you see me use later for buffing off the residue from the protectant products. I didn't want any cross-contamination going on there. First up here we have the GT trim. Again, this is at 1:4. I'm using it 1:4 everywhere when I do all of these jobs here today. But I put a couple of spritz onto the pad and then a couple of spritz more just to make sure it's nice and saturated and there's a decent amount of product being applied. And then I'm going to switch over to the other side of the applicator and I'm going to put on some 303 Aerospace Protectant. Again, a couple of spritz onto the pad there. So initially, when you look at these two going on, you think, oh, the 303 which is going on now looks a bit richer, a bit shinier. And it is up until I level it, so we'll buff it off in a minute to take off the excess. So you can see there what we're looking at. Yeah, the trim looks a bit matter, but actually looks nicer, I think. But now if I just buff that off and level it, you can see they're much more comparable. I got a better view for you here though, so I'm doing it in the driver's footwell. Again, this is a place that gets a lot of footfall and abuse. You know, your feet are constantly scuffing and rubbing against that panel there. So I cleaned it off, and then this is the GT trim in these two sections, and in between it I'm going to put in the 303. So this is still the GT trim. I'm just going to level that around, and now I've got the 303 Aerospace Protectant. I'm just going to make sure I get that applied thoroughly, wipe off that excess there. I did switch the pad side over, by the way, and now use my cloth just to level off. So that's the trim, switch to a different part of the cloth for the 303. Now that looks very even to me.
So on the dash, it's a bit different for me. I am going to put the 303 and the GT trim next to each other, but I'm also going to put the one I prefer to use here, and that is GT Dash Serum, because this is a nice OEM protectant and serum for it, but it doesn't make it shiny, and I don't like a shiny dash. But we're going to test them side by side anyway. So over here is the trim. Okay. Then in the middle, bit of dash serum, and then the 303. Now, last time I did the dash serum and the 303 next to each other, I very much preferred the look of dash serum. But let's have a look. Okay, level these off. That's for the GT trim. Then this side is the dash serum. And then this bit is for the 303. Is there much of a visible difference? There is a little bit of a stripe. I'm going to need to try and get a still photograph of this to really demonstrate this, because it's quite...
Now I think you can see here there is a very obvious difference, isn't there? So here's a bit that's the 303, that's the GT Dash Serum, and then there's the trim on the other side. I must say that the trim actually looks really nice. It looks better than the 303 does here. 303 looks a bit nondescript. It's not such a hard line, must have been how I applied it. But I actually really like the look, the richness of the GT trim. I'm not saying it's right. I still prefer a matte, real satin look on the dash, but it is rich, and that's impressive.
So plastic trim is an important part of using a product like this. Now I'm using it here on this particular bumper, which is ceramic coated. It's had Geon trim 2 years ago, so it's starting to go off. It's lasted very well. Really recommend Geon trim. but it's starting to go off and I need to top it up. So what I'm going to do is put it up against Infinity Wax Plasti Coat, because that's what I normally put on exterior plastic trims. I love it, it lasts well, it doesn't run or streak. So that is what I expect to see between these two. So very easy, half and half on this one.
So when I'm applying an exterior trim dressing, I want it to go on easily and evenly, and I was getting that here. I could see where I'd been, it looked nice and darkened, nice and satin, really happy with that. What I don't like is getting runs in the finish, so that's what I'm really testing. You can see I'm having a little of a trickle of water coming out under the hi at my email address. Now, we can excuse that. If we had a run here, we know that's what's caused it. And the reason that's happened is because I was rushing to get this done. I didn't have a chance to blow out everything as I was really tight on time. However, I've done the same application now over with the Infinity Wax. That's a ready-to-use product. You can't dilute that one. But ever since I got that introduced to that product, it has solved the problem of exterior trim dressing for me. It doesn't streak, it darkens nicely, it lasts 3 to 6 months, genuinely does, and I'm really impressed with that. So that's why it's a good test. Now, 3 days later, it had been bone dry up until this point, and it rained overnight. Got a nice uniform, like beady finish, everything looks pretty good so far. Skip forward a week and a half though, this is the day after Storm Amy, and it's a streaky mess, but not on the Infinity Wax side. So it is the Garage Therapy trim side here, when we pan back over to that now, that you can see it's not looking good. And this is in fact the exact thing I don't like to see. However, when I did the scuttle panel, this is all trim here, and it looks absolutely fine. So what I'm wondering is if the ceramic coating has interfered with the adhesion of the Garage Therapy trim on top of it. So I need to do a bit more testing and research for that. But let's go over to the door handles.
And here, now this is interesting. This is very porous plastic. I coated all of this at the same time. And this is just sucked it up, and it doesn't look great now. I was just going to put Geon trim on. I did it on the motorbike, and I contacted Maz at Garage Therapy and said, it's a bit patchy, a bit streaky. And he said, if it's really absorbent plastic, you might want to put a bit of tyre serum on first. Cool. So what I'm going to do, put tyre serum all over this one, and then half of it I'm going to put on the Geon trim on top, and the other half I'm just going to leave as tyre serum, see how that does. And then this one, I'm just going to use the Infinity Wax. Okay. This isn't just random and weird, by the way, because of what tyre serum is it can condition plastics and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to see. We do probably need to leave this a few minutes to go off, like 15 minutes or so. So I'm going to apply it on here now. I'll leave it 15 minutes and then I'll come back and do the trim over the top. It looks nice already, right? Okay, cool. We'll leave that to dry for a bit.
And on this rear door handle, I'm going to put on some of the Infinity Wax Plasti Coat, because this is actually the weakest area of the Infinity Wax product. It does not go well on porous plastics like this because it's so thin, it goes on like water. So this will be an interesting bit to review in the future.
Cool, there you go. Right, so we'll give that 15 minutes to dry out, and then I'll come back and then do some trim on top half of this and then one side of the door container. Right, it's been 15 minutes. So, just going to put the trim on the top part of this handle here, and the top here, and then I'll go around this side, why not? Right, well, that's how we go, and we'll see how they go on. Now normally I use Autoglym Vinyl and Rubber Care here. I clean the engine bay, leave it wet, spray it on, shut the bonnet, job done. It leaves a lovely even finish, it's water immiscible, it spreads out. Perfect. Apparently you can do the same with this, so that's what we're going to tell. But first I need to give this an almighty clean, because it's been years since I've done it and it looks horrible.
Okay, well, almighty clean might have been a stretch. What I'm actually using is Dodo Juice Crudzilla, which is the exact same product as China Gloss Forced. I'm applying that on there and then using a variety of different brushes to agitate it before giving it a rinse down. that is all you need to do for cleaning your engine bay. And then when it's wet, you can just spray on your trim dressing of choice, and then you shut the bonnet. So that is the trim that's gone on. So the left-hand side will be the trim. The right-hand side is going to be the Autoglym product. I believe the trade version of that product is Super Sheen, but I can't quite remember. So I'm aiming to get a fairly even coverage on both sides, and then you just shut the bonnet and leave it to dry. You come back and see something like this. Bit streaky at the top, purely because I went to wash the glass afterwards, so some water ran down on the scuttles, but it's the same on both sides. And here you can see different plastic materials dressed differently. It may look a bit streaky on the engine bay cover there. I was being very careful in the middle not to cross-contaminate. So the important thing really is to see what it's like on either side of the Mercedes-Benz badge. Not that bit in the middle, because I clearly didn't apply anything there. You could also, by the way, just spray it on while it's wet and then use a microfiber just to spread it around if you wanted to, just to ensure an even coverage. I generally don't bother. I don't need to with the Autoglym. So is it okay? Does it perform the same as that? Well, I think so. Based on this evidence, they look broadly comparable to me. Lots of different plastics, like the housings for the headlights are different. And the camera actually makes these two look very different, but in reality, it looks just like this on both sides. So yeah, nothing really to write home about in terms of there being a drastic difference. I would definitely use it here because I think it works well, as you can see in this still. So I started out this video with the question of, is this better than CarPro Perl? And the answer for me is yes, unequivocally, this is better than CarPro Perl. But CarPro Perl is a jack of all trades and a master of none. So this is better than that, but it is still, the jury's out on some things. The exterior trim is the bit that I've got the most questions on. So it didn't seem to go so particularly well over the ceramic coated bit, but on the scuttles seemed to be absolutely fine. So I need to do more testing there, and you can use it on tyres, which I forgot about, and I needed to get another water-based dressing, which I now have, so I can do a side-by-side comparison. Because there was no point trying this against tyre serum, for example, because that would be better, or the other one I have is Gion Tyre Q2 Express. Not Express, sorry, the Q2M one, so the longer lasting one. It would be an unfair comparison. So I've got something else I can use there, which is good. So I'm happy with that. I would say if you're doing lots of trim like I've got on this van, just get a ceramic coating. Gion trim is brilliant, and it's a lot less scary and far more forgiving applying a ceramic coating on plastic than it is on bodywork. Leveling just much easier. The high spots are harder to spot anyway. But if you're scared about Gion trim, go and get Infinity Wax Synergy Light V2. That works everywhere on all the surfaces and is very, very good. Very easy to apply, very forgiving. But the main thing is, can you use this in all the different circumstances they say? Yes, you can. I need to do some further testing in some scenarios. But would I recommend buying this now as is? Yeah, because I replaced two products with this, the 303 Aerospace Protectant and the Autoglym Vinyl and Rubber Care that I use in the engine bay and in wheel arches. So, in that context, yes, I've already replaced two products with one. Might have done a third in terms of tyre dressing. I think it'll probably be all right for that. Short-term water-based white tyre dressing, why not? Links are down below, as I said before, as is a discount code, so go and get yours. And yeah, happy cleaning. See you in the next one.